Welcome, everyone. Simon Rosenberg, Hopium Chronicles, back with another great event. Today, we have a special event, really, not just a great event, a special event. We're joined by Randi Weingarten, the amazing, patriotic, powerful, just gritty and tough leader of the American Federation of Teachers and the author of a new book called Why Fascists Fear Teachers. Welcome, Randi.
Thank you. I wish my mother was still alive to hear that introduction, Simon. Thank you.
I just realized I have the book somewhere in the house, and I don't have it with me. I forgot. I'm not good at the book thing. I have to get better at that. But listen, I just
You
in
don't
reading.
you don't have a publisher drumming into your head at all times. Every time you do something,
Hold it up.
you pull the book up.
Hold it up. And folks, you should buy it. And it's just I'm really excited to have Randy here. I'm sort of a big fan, and so it's nice to have her here. And listen, you described the book as a love letter to teachers. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So first, Simon, thank you for having me on, and also thank you for everything that you do. You are just, I mean, I was going to call you iconic because you are out there every single day finding that hope and and shining a light on it, and not just the name of the Hopium Chronicles, but you do that all the time, and people need hope, people need joy. And part of what I did here was there's like two bookends here. One is the warning, the title. I use the term very intentionally. Why Fascists Fear Teachers. I use the title intentionally, and I didn't call anybody fascist. I did that intentionally as well because I wanted to describe and I wanted people to understand fascistic behavior. But the second part of the book is the part that is who are the hope agents? Who are the people who are trying to be the antidote? Who are the people who try to stand up democracy by creating opportunity for kids each and every day, by creating a sense of pluralism, a sense of a cohesiveness of society, of being able to, despite differences, learn together, um, be together, respect each other, respect basic humanity. So when I said it's a love letter to teachers, it's because actions speak louder than word. I mean, a book is words, but the stories about teachers were what I wanted to convey. Not just platitudes, but stories about what teachers do, who they are, their nature and essence. And every single teacher that I have ever met in my life, and as you can imagine, I have met many, from my mother, who was a teacher in Nyack, New York for, first Miami, then Nyack for over 29 and a half years, to my own teachers, to the teachers I have the honor to represent every single day. Their through line, what binds them together is they want to make a difference in the lives of kids. They understand that kids are our future, and they put up with all the, you know what they put up with. I guess I can say crap
You
on your
definitely can.
podcast, right? The crap that they put up with
Yep.
because they want to make a difference in the lives of kids. And I felt that while I still had it in me, and while my name was still recognized as, someone who had some expertise about teachers, I felt it was really important for me to be out there fighting for who teachers are, and showing them the support that they should be getting each and every day from the powers that be. They get it in local communities, but not from the powers that be. And that's why I felt fiercely that I needed to do something, not just in my everyday, work. And frankly, writing a book is part of how you do that. So you leave it for eternity, but you also leave it for this moment so that people see in the people I talk about, the Abby Clemens, the um, Lyndon Johnson as a teacher, Karen Lewis, Ryan Richmond, Jeff Atkins Diatro, I want people to see themselves in the teachers that I lift up.
Wow, I have so many thoughts about this. And I think in prepping for this today, one of the things I was thinking about was that, my kids are 25, 22, and 20, and they were all teenagers during COVID. And, have had to get through the last decade here in America. And I was thinking that I haven't been able to express adequate gratitude to the teachers, the nurses, the doctors that got us through COVID. That and as because it was the hardest period in my life. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, getting three teenagers through school during that period. And I was really, in many ways, grateful for the whole premise of your book, because I think that in addition to standing up for democracy, teachers also just went through this sort of extraordinary event where they were on the front lines of keeping kids in this country together and moving forward in
Right.
unprecedented circumstances. And there needs to be, when we get back into power, Randy, one of the things I want to work with you on is there almost needs to be a national day to honor the people that got us through all of that, because it's sort of been already flushed into the memory hole,
Right.
and it's a mistake, I think, that we had. And I have enormous, powerful gratitude, not just for the teachers that I have and the people that continue to teach me. Like, I feel like Heather Cox Richardson is my teacher every day, right? I
Every day.
learn every day. I learn from her every day. Timothy Snyder, but also as a father, I have just crazy levels of gratitude for the great teachers in my three kids' lives. And so it's great that I think I'm fascinated by this book now in a way that I wasn't before, just about the need for us to recognize the power of teachers.
I think so, Simon, let me just say, this is, if you think about what happened during COVID, the amnesia, sorry, I have my dog is sitting
We're pro
right
dog.
behind me. Yes, we are pro dog,
We're pro
and
dog
she's
here at
like
Hopium.
sitting right behind me. Um, the the reason that I think there's such a lingering trauma and bitterness is that we never actually made the fight against COVID uh, a national fight, like
Yep.
World War II was a national
Yep.
fight. What, regardless of whether you believed in all the things that happened after 9/11, it was still a national fight.
Yep.
The race to the moon with Kennedy was a national fight, a national prerogative. And what's happened in our um, in America is that there's so much divisiveness right now that it's that people don't join together to honor the heroes in a real way, but also honor the everyday aspects of what people did. Public servants all throughout America basically kept America whole. Grocery store workers. So, this was not the billionaires, this was the regular
Yeah.
workers in America who, and at the same time, obviously, the nurses. Look, I get to represent, we're the second largest nurse union, we're the, second largest teachers union. I get to represent a lot of people who actually did this kind of work and what they asked for. And look, 1 million people died. More people died in America than other places. And what they asked for was to just be safe. And instead of actually the Trump administration doing everything in its power to get us, for example, the 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 testing that we needed, because what we learned by the beginning of 2021, the end of 2020, that if we could actually do the testing, we could actually really, that was the key to reopening schools safely, not the mask, not, but testing and ventilation. But we didn't know that initially. And teachers everywhere, I mean, secret, teachers hate hybrid learning, hate it. They'd rather be in school, and they'd much rather be in school than do virtual learning. But everywhere, teachers kept our communities together, and everywhere, nurses and doctors and the helpers in hospitals and the service employees in hospitals kept everybody as healthy as possible. And I agree with you. We need to figure out a way to recast what happened, to honor the heroes, respect the memories, and do better, so that, God forbid, there's another pandemic, we as America actually have clear knowledge in terms of what to do, and then fund it so that we can actually make sure we keep people safe, healthy, and America moving, particularly our kids.
And I think, Randy, this is such a healthy conversation because I think that we all kind of ran away from COVID
Right.
politically. Is that I think part of what's happening now in the country is that we did literally all fall apart, right? I mean,
We
like
did.
literally, civil society literally fell apart. We became distant from one another instead of feeling in community with one another, right? The sense, I have three Gen Z kids, and their relationship to the collective is very different because they had to withdraw from the collective for 18 months, and so it
Yep.
felt more fragile, than perhaps than our experience growing up, right? And I do think that
Much more
you're,
fragile. It
yeah,
it just completely broke society.
it broke society, and we haven't put it back together.
Right.
And I think it is, a bigger, it's been my general belief and in my commentary and my writing that the COVID is playing a much bigger role in what's happening now than we all really
Hmm.
acknowledge and understand. Because I think the general collective thing has been to run away from it as opposed to run towards it. And we fell apart and we haven't come back together. And
Right.
then I think there were a lot of people who were deeply isolated from each other. And it's been, look, my own life, right? I'm doing a lot of this stuff. I work from home now. I'm not out with people as much as I used to be, 10 years ago. And so we've got work to do. This is an important part of the journey
Right.
forward
I
for us
I
and putting things back
completely
together.
and I completely agree with you. And I also think the combination of COVID and social media and the algorithms of social media, um, I'm so glad that Jonathan Haidt wrote Anxious Generation, and that there's now a lot of data that shows that attention is really, that we have an attention crisis. People aren't reading. Kids are, I mean, look, adults, we're addicted to this. There it is. We're addicted to this stuff too. But, or I'm addicted to this too. But it's, but we have to get back to having relationships with each other. And that's what schools do. And having uh, an ability um, uh, to disagree civilly. And that if you have a disagreement with somebody, or somebody's different than you, instead of going to out fight or flee, instead of going to all out hatred, like figuring out how that which binds us is greater than that which divides us. And I think that, but that is part of what we've lost, not only by COVID, but also by the way in which our politics operate. And it's a really, so schools become really important. And I talk about this in different chapters in the book. The book is only about 200 pages, 180 pages, but uh, the notion of how, what we do to help kids learn how to think, but also what we do to ensure that kids have the um, the humanitarian gene, that kids are able to have empathy for each other, understanding for each other, the social square, the public square, the community that gets created by public schooling is absolutely essential. That pluralism is absolutely essential. And I think that's part of the reason why fascists, whoever they are, and autocrats, whoever they are, really, really fight against public education and against critical thinking and against pluralism.
Well, I think one of the most shocking things for me about Trump 2.0 has been the attack on higher ed and science and
Right.
research. And, you know, a lot of this I expected. And this part of it, perhaps because I was naive and not as schooled in fascism as others, I it's just so the assault on Harvard. I mean, my middle child is at George Washington in DC, and he said that because of the cuts from Trump, the library now is they've curtailed the library hours in the
Right.
major library, so it's harder for students to study, you know, in a major institution. And it was like, how in the world did we come to this, right? Where the president of the United States is making it harder for kids to learn at school in a private institution, by the way, right? And it just, I think that if you could reflect, Randy, and take this through this part of your book about the fear of critical thinking and knowledge and learning, because I think, to me, I still think this is the part of what's happened that is the most shocking to me and the most
Right.
kind of inexplicable, because it feels so much more like sabotage than any kind of strategy.
So I think what they're doing is quite intentional, figuring out, finding, I call it the spaghetti, the throwing the spaghetti on the wall and seeing what will stick, because there's no morality attached to this. I mean, we're like, we're in the middle of the Jewish holidays. Happy New Year, by the way, and have a good fast, by the way, this
To
week.
you, to you.
But thank you. But but they never take on right-wing anti-Semitism. I mean, for Nick Fuentes to hang out with Donald Trump, for um, Grok to be, there issues around anti-Semitism, for the Musk salute that many of
Yeah.
us thought was very reminiscent of what Hitler had done. There's a conspicuous silence, the Proud Boys, all of the silence about right-wing anti-Semitism, but yet using the civil rights laws to go after what you think, using it, weaponizing it to try to bring these private institutions to their knees, and taking away things that for the public good, like NIH funding and funding for research. I mean, what is this war against science? It's like, so there's a war against knowledge, there's a war against science, there's a war against facts, but science, like, science. And so you have to, uh, I want to put aside the hypocrisy for a second because it's so self-evident, but there's an intentionality here. You see it in a Project 2025, and just like you, people like Ruth Ben-Ghiat and people like Tim Snyder and Jason Stanley and Heather Cox Richardson, they've become my teachers. I mean, I acknowledge them in the book as my teachers. But what what is clear, the intentionality here, and Snyder says this, I keep thinking that it is, the division between rich and poor and inequality, and we have more inequality since the Gilded Age, and that big ugly bill was essentially the biggest transfer of wealth from poor and middle class to rich that we've seen in certainly our lifetimes. Now, Long Island doesn't see it as much because many of us made a huge stink about the salt tax or the salt
Right.
deduction being taken away by Trump. So now he's put some of it back and he gets credit. He took it away. So, but the point I'm trying to make is what Snyder says, it's actually worse than that. He calls it de-enlightenment,
Right.
because what he's saying is they're not even wanting to help their own people. They just want to recreate a world where the rich, the billionaire class, the existing billionaire class can have all the goodies, and everybody else is left to fend for themselves with whatever is left. And if you see it in the way that Tim Snyder does, then it's obvious why they don't want institutions of higher education. Their kids will be able to go.
Right.
but don't make it affordable. Don't make it broad-based opportunity. Don't make it affordable for others. Don't and the ones that you actually think are, even though Vance and Trump and how many of them went to an Ivy, they just want them to basically knuckle under and not teach in a broad, um, open, liberal, and when I say liberal in this way, I'm talking about liberal society versus illiberal society.
Right.
They don't, they are afraid of knowledge, and they are afraid of the skills of having knowledge. And the irony here is that these are the folks that keep saying and using originalist or originalism when you're talking about, cases in the Supreme Court, and they, run to quote the framers and the founders anytime they can. Well, the framers and the founders, one of the single through lines, they weren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but one of the through lines was they did whatever they could to stop another king. And they believed that public education was the way you stop kings, it was the bulwark against tyranny. And the other thing they believed was they believed in separation of church and state
Right.
as a way to create the free exercise of religion. They did not want to have another, they didn't want to have a theocracy, and they didn't want to have a monarchy. And you just have to read the framers to understand how this was the biggest through line. This is what, every time there was a debate, every time there was can you get through, can you get to a compromise on the Constitution, those two principles, as well as freedom of association, freedom of speech, they were ever present. Madison, Jefferson, Franklin, Washington, they all talked about the importance of education as a bulwark against tyranny.
Well, what is so incredible, and I think you've made a point that we talk about at Hopium a lot, is that there was this belief in the first term that he was sort of a tribal leader and that he was protecting the white tribe against all comers, right? And now there's no even pretense for that anymore. That he's protect his tribe is a couple hundred people now, of including now MBS and other, global oligarchs. That's his tribe now. The tariffs are hurting his people. The healthcare cuts are going to hurt his people. The gun violence that we're seeing are hurting his
Mhm.
people, right? Their agenda has utter disregard for his own people, and he's sort of
Exactly
sought
right.
up, and there's no even pretense any longer. I mean, what's so interesting about his daily discourse is there's no even pretense that they're doing things that are good for people in America anymore.
Right.
He's not even attempting to make a case. So he's sawing off. And the Washington Post today has a really incredible story on the front page of an interview with a MAGA couple in Georgia, who they spent time with over days, and them sort of acknowledging how disappointed they are in Trump and how they feel incredibly betrayed by him. And it's very powerful story because it's the kind of thing that we don't often see in our media, right? We all the Democratic defectors get national play, but these were people who did a very good job articulating the profound sense of betrayal they feel from Trump and what he had promised. And so, we're in a remarkable moment. And I
Hmm.
think that, I think the other thing that and so your book is welcome now, Randy, for this moment, because I do think we are all trying to find our way through this time, right? And to stay grounded and to stay optimistic, to stay fighting, to stay engaged. Because what they want more than anything else is for us to disengage and to obey in
Exactly.
advance, right? And so
Exactly.
tell us, how's the book doing? I mean, are you happy with the sales and everything so far?
I don't look, I said, and maybe it's because of the, you know, that I have a day job. My day job is
Mhm.
not being an author. So I did this in partnership with the AFT. The AFT are our disaster relief fund and our education fund gets, well, all the proceeds from bulk sales go to the AFT, and half the proceeds from individual sales go to the AFT. So, this is really done in partnership with them. And I decided a long time ago that I would tell about the book. I would not sell the book. I'm very happy for others to sell the book. I'm very happy that I'm doing a lot of events. For me, it's a lot of events in small bookstores, independent bookstores,
How
because
fun.
I'm
How fun is
trying
that?
to lift up small businesses and
Yeah.
lift up our community. So those are where I'm basically doing events, not big venues. And it also gives people a way to create a community, and it gives the bookstores some revenue if they so choose. Um, it made the bestseller lists the first
Woo!
week. I mean, so it made the New York Times bestseller list, and it made the USA Today bestseller list. And I'm very grateful for that. I want people to read it, and I want teachers to see themselves in it, but I want the public, particularly lots of people who are saying, what's going on here and why? I mean, even you, Simon, said, we didn't really know a lot about fascism. Part of that is our fault as education, because we teach a lot about, so, I want to, I, we teach a lot about the democratic experience. We teach a lot about our own history. That's a lot of what we do in elementary, middle, and high school. We don't teach about comparative governments. I mean, we
Yeah.
basically have one semester in high school about all of global history. So this notion of the differing kinds of governments and that kind of oppression to people, and that's what I saw at in the tail end of the election, that when people like Millie and Kelly talked about it, these were not liberals talking about it. These were people who were stooped in and steeped in and understood not only history but current events, that were seeing something that was very threatening to the American experiment. And they were warning us about it, and people saw it as political instead of the warning. So the book, so I want people to read it. I want people to see that there's another explanation for why there is basically an attack on public education, an attack on institutions that are beloved by parents and kids. Not that we can do a lot of stuff better, and we have to constantly do things better. And but I keep saying we have to strengthen, not abandon public education.
Yeah.
Look at our warts, look at our faults, make things better. Don't blame teachers. They are trying the best they can, and they are the antidotes to what ails us. And the last thing I'll say is that we're in this race between fear and hope. And a lot of people lose hope. And one of the reasons, here it is, I think here it is, one of the reasons I'm starting to wear this little paperclip is because of, everybody, okay, you go to court to fight, you go to the Congress to fight, but one of the things I'm trying to do, and this was the first story in my book, is to talk about how you can build community. And when teachers in Norway, after the Nazi occupation, when they started wearing a paperclip to show that they were bound together, like papers were bound together by a paperclip, and kids in Norway started wearing paperclips as necklaces, parents started wearing paperclips. Yes, it was a resistance against the Nazis. The Nazis closed schools because they hated this. And teachers kept teaching and they kept wearing paperclips. The Nazis created their own association, and teachers wouldn't join it, even though they were forced to. This is a very little symbol about coming together as community. And I think the most important thing we can do is we have to come together as community. And I would also urge your listeners and viewers, No King's Day in October. October 18th is going to be really important as an inflection point to say to this president, no, we don't like it. We may not agree with everything else with each other, but no, do not take our freedoms away. Do not take our democracy away. We, 250 years ago, we had a revolution to fight against monarchy and fight against kings. We're not going back.
Well, what an interview. Thank you, Randy. And I will tell you that we are stronger together than apart. And,
we
this
are.
is really important. And I think your emphasis on community, I think this is also part of us coming out of COVID, right? I mean, there is this, I work so much that I don't get to travel as much as I want. And 2 weeks ago, I went to Minnesota and did an event with the Minnesota Democratic Party. And I just got to be in a room with lots of amazing people. And it really was very important for me. There's a difference between going out and hanging out with DC people, I mean, I saw you in DC recently, but, there is this just yearning to be together and for things to
Right.
be better and for things to be better. And so, I take what you said there at the end to heart, and I love the paperclip story, and thank you for that. And listen, thank you for what you're doing. And folks, what an amazing leader. How lucky we are. Buy the book, and let's keep fighting, everyone. Right, Randy? Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
the time and just for
Thank
the
you, Simon.
sentiment and the passion and the power. You took us to where we needed to go today. Oh, you dropped off, but
Thank
see you. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Buy the book, subscribe to Hopium, and keep fighting, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.